Hi, and welcome. We're going to talk today on social justice and education. And Dylan's here with me and my newer puppy, Lenny, who has been at our feet, so he'll come and go from our video today. And yeah, so this is a really important topic, and it's lots to unpack. So Dylan's going to start with that and lead us through this conversation.
All right, hi everybody. So, with these changes in social justice and implementing this into school, here you go. It's been a bit of a difficult journey for a lot of new teachers because a lot of these ideas that are trying to be implemented into schools in systematic ways and in systemic ways are not being met because they are still in a very old system, which is not definitely subscribing to those new ideas, but there is movements towards it. So what I'd like to talk about today is an article by Alison Dover. She had spoke a lot about the different conceptual frameworks and the pedagogical philosophies of implementing social justice into your classroom and into different research. So the ones that I'm going to talk about are democratic education, critical pedagogy, social justice education, culturally responsive education, and multicultural education. Sorry, this puppy's just going all over. Hey, get out of there! Sorry, well, that's kind of what happens when we invite you into the living room here. So, with democratic education, this is talking about participation and civics and being experiential. Critical pedagogy is education as political problem-posing methodologies and knowledge co-creation. Social justice education is discussing oppression theory and intersectionality, and it's also with a systemic approach. Culturally responsive education is really diving into teacher identity, family engagement, academic skills, and constructivism. And the final one with multicultural education is multicultural content and how that can be applied in maybe a praxial way. The importance of transformative and not additive reform. So just to dive a little bit more into those with democratic education, this is really looking at the practical applications of these philosophies. So this is looking at the civic functions, so self-governance and community engagement and experiential education. So this is definitely trying to develop a sense of agency and equity within your students that they can use beyond the classroom. So moving on to critical pedagogy, this is explicit social justice agenda. So this is looking at the challenges of having a politically neutral curriculum and education system. And then what it's trying to do is challenge that by seeking to develop and have a socio-political consciousness through a co-investigation of problem-solving dialogue. So this third one here is social justice education, where it attempts to review the effects of a holistic education and societal transformation. And so this is looking at curricular content and the social identity of injustice and looking at oppression theory and intersectionality. And this is also done in a very reflective teaching. So there's that critical reflexivity that we were talking about yesterday and one of our other blog posts, and looking at the technical skills and the readiness to affect this change that teachers can be specifically trained to. And this last one here, the multicultural education, is grounded in Black traditions of educational critique. So this really came from the 1960s during the civil rights movement. And there's 5 components of that, which is curriculum content, examining knowledge production, equity pedagogy, and the promotion of academic achievement across all groups. And the final one is the restructive school culture organization to facilitate that equity. So it's really not having it just in isolation in your classroom, but having it more as a school-wide approach. And that is always happening and can be solidified through standards-based texts that are actually being reinforced in documents. So the way that this has been lived in the lives of Indigenous people, I'm going to pass this on to Lori. She's got a great story to tell us about.
Yeah, so I've spent the last 15 years in Thunder Bay working for Anishinaabe Nation in a post-secondary environment, but they also have a high school there. And what that means is there's a high school for the nation And those students have to travel hundreds of kilometers in to attend high school because their small remote First Nation communities do not have a high school. So this is part of that systematic social justice inequities that we still face here in Canada, where students are faced with many challenges just to get an education. So there's a great video that was released just this week by the youth, and it's their voices on speaking to the community of Thunder Bay and asking for support and making them feel safe, and letting them know that coming to a big city center it's unfamiliar and it's intimidating for them, and helping them, I guess, some cultural responsive training themselves, the youth, sharing with the community, but also explaining how challenging it is for them to get an education. So we're going to link that video at the bottom for you all to review. Thank you. Yeah, good.
Thank you very much. The last thing I wanted to say was just that the research that is going into social justice with authors like Alison Dover here, it's really trying to promote and facilitate content that is critical thinking, and it's culturally competent, and it's using these sources to advocate